And I'm going to go over mainly books, but there'll be some movies, TVs, and some radio involved. About over the centuries, the red planet has been more than just a distant world. It's been a mirror, a mystery, and a muse. The many faces of Mars is portrayed in literature, film, television, and radio. From war-hungry Martians of H.G. Wells to stranded botanist of The Martian, the campy sitcoms Aliens Calling, to chilling radio broadcasts that once sparked real-world panic. And if you think the, uh, the one we heard was spark panic, I have a couple of other examples that spark some real panic. If you think this is just for entertainment, then you would be mistaken. Mars, specifically over the years, has been used to debate social injustice, morality, politics, women's rights, even free love. So whether you're a sci-fi aficionado or just curious newcomer, we're going to talk about how Mars is shaped and been shaped by human imagination across mediums and generations. So I've broken it down into two sections. Mars in fiction before the Mariner probe reached it, and then after, because there were some significant changes uh, in how Mars was portrayed. Before the cold, hard date of the Mariner mission stripped away the mystery, Mars existed vividly in the realm of fiction, an imaginative frontier shaped more by telescopic speculation than scientific certainty. In the decades leading up to NASA's first successful flyby in '65, writers, filmmakers, dramatists conjured a Mars teeming with life, danger, and possibilities. It's a planet of ancient civilizations, warlike aliens, philosophical allegories, a mirror for the human ambition and anxiety. Mars was portrayed in fiction before the age of space probes, when the red planet was still a canvas for dreams, fears, and storytelling. So the following works of fiction deal with the planet itself and any assumed Martian civilizations as part of the planetary landscape. Mars has been seen as the perfect distance away from the Earth to create the ideal difference of lifestyles. This allows for early works to fuel the minds of what Mars could hold. Here is a playing card back from the 1920s. So this was part of a set called Romance of the Heavens, a 50-card astronomy set that was issued in 1928 by the Willis Cigarette Company. The first book, the review of the book Across the Zodiac by Percy Gregg, a pioneering voyage into speculative Mars fiction. The story of the record is a landmark in early science fiction, notably for being one of the first novels to set its narrative primarily on Mars. It was published in 1880 and predicts the genre-defining works of the genre-defining works of H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, and introduces several concepts that would echo through sci-fi. Now, the basic story of this is it follows the unnamed narrator who invents a form of anti-gravity and called apergy, and is used to travel to Mars in its spacecraft that he calls the astronaut, marking the first recorded use of the term in literature. Upon his arrival, he finds a race of diminutive Martians who refuse to believe he's from Earth. They just assume he's from another part of Mars, and they're just thrown awfully tall there. The Martians' disbelief and beyond eccentric arrogance, while the narrator's interactions with them carry the undertones of cultural superiority. So what was invented? They invented hydroponics. In this story, space travel includes a small garden, early nod to sustainable life support systems in space. Again, this is 1880. It also started the sword and planet subgenre. So it seems that no matter how advanced the civilization became, they still wanted to fight with swords. What's noted nice in 2010, a crater on Mars was named Greg in recognition of his contribution to the Martian law. And while the prose may feel dense and modern to readers across the zodiac, fascinating artifact of speculative fiction captures the spirit of the 19th century, scientific optimism and cultural introspection. A few years later, there's another book by Gustav Hope called Journey to Mars, A Wonderful World. It's actually a series of books. This one is Journey to Mars. He wrote then, it's a beautiful splendor, mighty racing kingdoms, and its final doom. Sprawling imaginative work predates and arguably anticipates the more famous Barsoom series by Edgar Rice Burroughs, published in 1894, blends speculative science, adventure, romance, offering a vivid portrait of Mars. So in this one, a story follows a Lieutenant Frederick Hamilton, a U.S. Navy officer who survives a shipwreck near the Antarctic Circle. Now, this is unusual because further on, you'll see that Martians tend to go to the Arctic for some reason than the Antarctic. They just, that's their nature. So if we're going to go to the North Pole, we're probably going to find a Martian there. He awakens aboard a spacecraft en route to Mars when he discovers a planet populated by three human races. And tell me if this doesn't sound familiar. The red, yellow, and blue Martians living in technologically advanced yet feudal society. Again, there's those swords. Hamilton becomes embroidered in politics, intrigue, spiritual mysticism, romance, all the while grappling with the looming destruction of the Martian world. In this one, spiritual and mysticism. So it brings up telepathy, prophecy. Martian magicians add a metaphysical layer, blending science fiction with occult fantasy. Again, this was in 1893. So now we have another one, Unveiling a Parallel. A groundbreaking work of feminist utopian science fiction, co-authored by two women, Alicia Eagle-Fritz and Jones and Ella Merchant. At the close of the 19th century, it was published in 1893. Now we get to the good one. Okay, a chilling mirror held up to empire, science, and survival. H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds is one of the earliest and most influential works of science fiction. It remains startlingly relevant more than a century after its publication. It has technically never been out of print. Written at the height of the British imperial power, the novel flips the colonial narrative again. Instead of Earthling conquering distant worlds, Earth is itself invaded by Martians, and we all know the story. Followed by arrival of cylindrical spacecraft in the English countryside. From this emerged Martians, tentacled, emotionless beings who unleash devastating heat rays, poisonous black smoke. The towering tripods ravage town cities. The narrator struggles to survive and make sense of the chaos. The novel is told in first person, with interludes from the narrator's brother, offering a broader view of societal collapse. And so the themes on this is the novel reflects the anxieties about unchecked technological progress. Martians are not evil. They're simply more advanced, and their indifference to human suffering is a warning against dehumanizing science. Probably could use that right now. Wells strips away the veneer of civilization as London falls, social order collapses, people revert to primal instinct. The narrator's journey is less heroic than existential. He survives not through valor, but luck and adaptation. Influence T.S. Huxley's novel explores the studies influenced by Wells's studies under T.H. Huxley. The novel explores natural selection on a cosmic scale. Humanity is not the pinnacle of evolution, but just another species vulnerable to extinction. So we come to probably the best known radio play ever produced, H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. And just to give you a little taste, so
present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
Speaker is not playing through the...
Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Mercury Theater and star of these broadcasts, Orson Welles.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that are to our minds as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 39th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment.
Not playing the whole show.
Near the end of October, business was better. The war scare was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crosley service estimated that 32 million people were listening in on radios.
The next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain accompanied by winds of light gale force.
That was a year ahead of when this show, when this broadcast was made, because it was Halloween of 1938. So one of his predictions didn't come true, unfortunately. The war scare was not over. So what happened? In 38, the War of the Worlds became a familiar children. War of the Worlds had become familiar to children throughout the medium of comic strips and many succeeding novels and adventure stories. A small percentage of listeners were frightened, and even a few panicked, perhaps by War of the Worlds on the night of the broadcast. How was that? Probably they didn't hear that introduction by Orson Welles, and they came in at the last minute, or didn't realize that Mercury Theater didn't know the time of the clock, know that that it was time for Mercury Theater. Now, one of the differences, and I'll go over it a little bit, is the first half of the show was not first person. They had done a lot of first person. They had done Treasure Island, and they had done some other shows. But as I told you before, as it was described before, this first person narrative, the guy was pretty dull. Basically, he was just cowering, trying to survive, and would not make for some interesting audio. So they devised this real life news report.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmuth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Will it be much louder?
No, you can hear it all right.
We now return you to Carl Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mr. Wilmuth's garden. From here, I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit. About 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain's conferring with someone. Can't quite see who. Oh, yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted, and the professor moves around one side, studying the object, while the captain and two policemen advance with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. Flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means. Wait a minute, something's happening. Humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Oh, Lord, they're turning into flames. Now the whole field's caught up by the woods, the barns, the gas tanks for the automobiles, spreading everywhere. It's coming this way now, about 20 yards to my right.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet. We continue now with our piano interlude.
As I was saying, most of the previous broadcasts resembled the second act, which was initially titled First Person Singular because it relied so heavily on the first person narration. But unlike the charming narrators of earlier Mercury adaptations such as Treasure Island and Sherlock Holmes, the protagonist of War of the Worlds was a passive character with a journalistic, impersonal prose style, both traits making a very boring monologues. So Wells and Houseman and Stewart agreed that the only way to save the show was to focus on enhancing the fake news bulletins in the first act. And the first half of the broadcast mimicked breaking news, complete with on-the-ground reports, expert interviews, and escalating chaos. Minimal disclaimers. Many listeners tuned in late, missing the opening announcement that it was a fictional drama without commercial breaks or clear clues. The realism was startling. I didn't know this. I found out there was a 27-piece orchestra and sound effects created a vivid soundscape from Martian heat rays to panicked crowds, which heightened the sense of urgency. Reports claim that thousands of people fled their homes, jammed phone lines, and flooded churches. While the scale of the panic has been debated, there's no doubt that the broadcast caused genuine alarm in some communities. Newspapers criticized the program as deceptive. The FCC considered regulation. Wells had a press conference the next day apologizing, but also basking in the sudden fame. If you want to unplug it one more time. And this is what he said at the end.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen. Out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night, so we did the best next thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it and that both institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian, it's Halloween.
Tonight, the Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations coast to coast has brought you The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, the 17th in its weekly series of dramatic broadcasts featuring Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air. Next week, we present a dramatization of 3 famous short stories. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Okay.
Boy, his writing in the beginning about,
It's still after 1938, how many, almost going on 90 years later, it still works.
yeah.
So we also have, in 1953, they adapted it for a movie. You might have seen it. Uh, Produced by George Powell. It's a landmark. It's only reimagined Wells, and they updated it from the Victorian era to the Cold War era in America, but also set visual and thematic templates that would echo through the decades. It won an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, thanks to the innovative use of miniatures, matte paintings, and sound design for the depiction of Martian war machines. Sleek hovering crafts, Cobra-like heat rays became iconic and influenced the design of alien technology in later films like Independence Day and Mars Attacks. By shifting the setting to 1950s, Southern California, the film tapped into contemporary fears of nuclear annihilation and foreign invasions, Martians' unstoppable force fields and death rays, mirrored the anxieties about technological warfare and the vulnerability of modern civilizations. The film introduced a mixture of characters, scientists, clergy, soldiers, civilians, each representing different responses to existential threat. This ensemble approach became a staple in disaster and sci-fi films. In 2011, the film was selected for preservation by the U.S. National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. It helped elevate science fiction from pulp entertainment to a genre capable of serious social commentary. 53 War of the Worlds was more than a spectacle. It was a reflection of its time, a warning about unchecked power, a blueprint for cinematic storytelling. Its influence can be seen in Spielberg's version and a remake of the structure of modern alien civilization narratives. Now, if you would unplug it, well, thank you. Except when you look at this trailer that I've edited.
This could be the beginning of the end for the human race. For what men first thought were meteors or the often ridiculed flying saucers are in reality the flaming vanguard of the invasion from Mars.
They slash across country like scythes, wiping out everything that's trying to get away from us.
The nations of the world mobilize their armed might, rushing to defend the Earth against the unknown weapons of the super race from the Red Planet. Is there nothing that can stop the Martian death machines?
Guns, tanks, bombs, they're like toys against them.
All over the world, human beings cower before the onslaught of these unearthly enemies, whom no one has ever seen. Panic that sweeps around the globe as the great masses of mankind flee blindly in a headlong stampede of hysteria.
Thank you.
I saw that at age 11.
So, yeah, they made a lot of them in color. Some of the themes didn't hold up well over the course of time, but those Martian ships scared the hell out of me. I think I remember my parents, they were doing a they were showing it in some drive-in, and going home from the movie, all the lampposts on said, "Oh my God." Yeah, so now when you see a lamppost, you're going to think the same thing I did. But needless to say, Orson Welles wasn't the only one who did a radio adaptation. There were a couple of others. There was two notable ones, one in Chile in 1944 and one in Ecuador in 1949. So the one in Chile in 1944 was blamed for panicking thousands and giving an electrician in Valparaiso, Jose Valerio, all right, well, I can't say his name, Valerio, a fatal heart attack, according to a Newsweek article. In Ecuador, the stunt was pulled off so convincingly that even authorities seem to have fallen for the story. The tragic results, a 19-year-old Radio Quinto staged its own, I'm sorry, when Jorge Rubinho was 19 years old, Radio Quinto staged its own version of the alien invasion. It was a Saturday night. The station was broadcasting a live concert when musicians were interrupted to announce that an enormous, this was a real concert they were having. A cylindrical object had crashed just north of the Capitol. Moments later, Leonardo Paez, one of the Quinto's best-known musicians and radio personalities, was rushed to the scene as Paez broadcast live from the Central Plaza. Long green arm emerged from an alien craft, and then Perez was fried by a bolt of light. So they had actual celebrities doing their cameos on this. 6 years later, that was 6 years after Orson Welles had done this famous broadcast. There was mass confusion, so convincing that many listeners believed they were under attack. Claimed that reports claimed that the Civic Center, air bases, and army barracks had been destroyed. One man, again, died from a heart attack, earning the grim distinction of being the first person killed by a fictional alien invasion. The fallout was swift. Chilean authorities banned future broadcasts that could incite panic, recognizing the power and danger of realistic radio dramatizations. But that wasn't the worst one. The worst, most dramatic, tragic moment was in 1949, Equatorian broadcast of War of the Worlds. On February, sorry, let's go back. February 12th, 1949, Radio Quinto aired a Spanish language adaptation. The program, did I read the wrong one? The dramatic director staged a live news bulletin, again, interrupting a music programming. So I guess they took from they had actors impersonating government officials to heighten the realism. Bogus U.S. sightings had even been planted in newspapers beforehand to prime the public. When the station finally revealed it was a hoax, the mob was furious. A mob gathered outside the radio station and set it on fire.
Yeah.
Not so funny. There were 100 people trapped inside. Some escaped through the back exits. Some of them jumped out of windows. Army was called in with tanks and tear gas to disperse the crowd. At least 15 people died, and many more were injured. This remains the deadliest incident ever caused by a media broadcast. Some historical images and commentaries. That's the headline from the paper. Let's go on to the next one. That's the building that was set on fire. The president, with President Gallo out of the plaza, so the president was out of town. Someone apparently ordered the police and firefighters to head to where the fictional landing was. The Red Cross followed suit, according to the person who wrote this, who wrote a brief history of the event. It didn't take long for the radio station to realize it had overplayed its hand, shut down the show to reassure the audience it was just a dramatization. Again, they surrounded the building, set it on fire. The problem was the fire department couldn't get there because they were going to the other town, which I guess made things worse. So the daughter of one of the people always believed that security didn't react because they were embarrassed over having fallen for the hoax. The key players survived, but at least 6 people, well, the other one said 15 died, including the radio pianist and violin player. And one of the authors of the play's girlfriend was also killed in the fire. For Orson Welles, the turning point, the event turned him into an international sensation. Not so much for these people. They were disparaged. A couple ran to evade prosecution, but that's what they reported. Reports at the time say he fled to Venezuela to escape the law, but that's not accurate according to the daughter. The account that she gave, she was in hiding. He was in hiding for 3 months and eventually was exonerated. In fact, he continued to work for another 6 years in Ecuador, winning National Theater Awards to Venezuela with his children to give him an education. I guess have to wonder whether something like Orson Welles might have gone a whole lot worse if, but sounds like they actually planting news stories to hype it up. and then not doing anything to tell anybody that this was just a fake story. So with that, in 1994, I don't know if anybody remembers this, CBS is on the 56th anniversary of War of the Worlds, aired a fake news broadcast about alien attack. So paranoid about not alarming the public, they did this. If you want to unplug it.
Without warning. Without warning. Sponsored by Advil.
That's not fun. So this is the beginning of a movie they were showing.
We interrupt this program for a special bulletin. Here now is Sandy Hill.
Seismologists at Caltech now report at least 3 separate seismic events tonight, each in the northern hemisphere, with earth tremors of magnitude 8.5.
Oh, it gets better.
Events. None of what you are seeing is actually happening. Evening World News continues its coverage with Dr. Carolyn Jaffe and Sander Van Oker.
For those of you just joining us, we're tracking the story of a large near-Earth asteroid that broke up over the North Pole tonight. Well, before we sign off, correspondent Warren Olney has some information for us from Goldstone.
Sandy, the scientists here have deciphered the speech patterns of Kimberly Hastings and John Paul Schunar.
147 member states. Wait a minute. That's the recorded message we sent up in Voyager 2.
Track trajectories. No, there's too many. There's too many to calculate.
With all the missiles and all the power, I can only leave you with this thought from Shakespeare. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves.
Without Warning was not an actual newscast. This was a fictional movie.
Every commercial break, they did that.
Why? What did they think could happen? Wow.
Despite that, they got phone calls. I guess they didn't believe what was. So that was pretty funny. Okay, it says here, it prompted dozens of calls to CBS from confused viewers. I don't know. Now considered a cult classic. I remember seeing it. Anybody remember seeing it when it was first on? It's, you know, they real life broadcasters doing the news, which again wasn't new then, but it's pretty campy. So to spare you, I could be talking about all these other movies about Mars, but we'll just leave them up there for a minute so you can gather. I'll be putting this out on the group IO as a PDF. And if you have any questions about any of them later on after the talk, I can go back to the slide. I do have some information about all of these, but I am not going to subject you to all that. We're running long here, so let me speed it up a little bit. So back to, I'm going to go through these a little bit faster now because I knew this was going to take too long. So the television synopsis, Dr. Omega. Now, Dr. Omega was a older white-haired gentleman. It focused again on he's traveling with companions and he's going on many different adventures. And there was a lot of comparison to this guy, William Hartnell, the original Doctor Who. And they think they might have, people believe they patterned Doctor Who after this Dr. Omega. This was written in, when was this written? Does it say? Oh, I don't have a date for this one. But again, this was still pre-year 1900. And just for my Oh, you can't hear it. It's playing the Doctor. We'll go on. So another science fiction about Mars is set in revolutionary Russia, the Soviet Union. At the start, Red Star follows Leonid, a Bolshevik revolutionary mathematician living in the 20th century Russia, and he goes to Mars and finds that communism is there before him. So he's very happy about that. And but they're not doing it the right way, so he's trying to teach them the right way to do communism. That's the name of the book, Red Star. And next, we have a whole series of the John Carter of Mars series. Again, might have read some of that. His Mars was called Barsoom. Again, he wrote very, very many books about that. There was a comic book in the 30s, and there were actually two movies. I think there were one that was a straight to DVD movie. I don't know if anybody's ever saw that one. Then we have vampires. I mean, they have to make an appearance everywhere, so they made their appearance in 1908, and in a French publication. Story follows Robert Darvel, a penniless French engineer and amateur astronomer who is physically transported to Mars by a group of spiritualists.
It can't be the original cover art.
It may not be. So they're not only vampires, there's grotesque and carnivorous flora and fauna. So it's not a good planet to be on. Another is Alexei Tolstoy, the son of you know who. And so he wrote another Soviet revolutionary story about Mars, and in this one, they go to Mars. He's writing more about the authoritarian rule of the planet of Mars. He falls in love with a Martian. They're kind of Earth, human-looking people. He joins a workers' uprising against the Martian elite. The rebellion fails. He's disillusioned, heartbroken, and returns to Earth. Now, if you want to, well, there's nothing to unplug. It's a silent movie. So they liked it so much that they basically took the name and rewrote the story to make it that they go to Mars to again spread communism and release the proletariat from. Again, I've sped this up. This actually was like an hour and a half or something. It was like a lot. So there he is. He's flying. They fly to Mars. And they land. I think it's pretty good. So everyone there is rallying the workers to uprise, and that's the and more symbolism. And we do it. Can we? Yeah, we do it. Okay. And he's passing the torch, and there he's. And I like the reverse video on this, bending the thing backwards. I like that. Was pretty good.
Oh, wow.
A little heavy-handed on the imagery. And here he is. Workers unite, and then so the leader of Mars says, "I'm going to join you," and he's saying, "Wait a minute, he's just fooling you. Don't believe him." And he's a little cross-dressing there, I guess. I don't know what was going on with that. I don't know. It's pretty bad. But the real upshot of it comes at the end as a vehicle. He's now. Anybody tell me what was this actually about? He was just having a daydream.
Yeah.
So he didn't go anywhere. He was standing on the platform, and he just blanked out and had this daydream. Well, that's what they did in the movie. That wasn't the story that the guy wrote. And C.S. Lewis, he wrote, yeah, he wrote Out of the Silent Planet, influential fiction and unique fiction stories. Uh, he did this as a challenge between himself and J.R.R. Tolkien. It started, was satisfied with the state of contemporary science fiction in the 1930s. Both of them agreed to write their own science fiction stories that were better than the current crop of pulp paperback books. Tolkien's story, The Lost Road, was a time travel story that wouldn't be published until after his death decades later. In this story, it's a Dr. Elwyn Ransom, physiologist who is kidnapped by two men, Divine, a greedy opportunist, and Weston, a cold rationalist, taken aboard a spacecraft to Mars, where the inhabitants are known as Malacandras. The kidnappers intend to ransom as human sacrifice to the planet's mysterious ruler. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. So there's mysticism, and there's reimagined space not as a cold void, but as a vibrant spiritual realm. We all know his Books of Narnia series and stuff is very spiritual about a lot of that. So he carries that over into this. And here is his space trilogy. How are we doing on? All right, I'm going to speed this up. And Hyland's Red Planet. It was actually written as a juvenile novel series. It's about a colonist, Jim Marlowe, a teenager colonist on Mars, and his best friend Frank Sutton, as they uncover corporate conspiracy that threatens the survival of their colony. Let's see, what else do I want to say about this? Martians are portrayed not as threats, but as ancient wise beings with their own culture and values. Heinlein's respectful depiction of alien intelligence contrasts with the hostile Martians of H.G. Wells, offering more nuanced views of interspecies relationships. Comparisons, let's see. Compared to Space Cadet, Red Planet is more emotionally driven and less focused on institutional loyalty. Also predates Heinlein's later, more controversial works like Starship Troopers and Stranger in a Strange Land, which delve deeper into political and philosophical territories. Vibrant mix of adventure, ideology, speculative world building. Story of growing up in a hostile environment, learning to question authority, forging bonds across species. While its prose may feel dated to modern readers, its core themes remain strikingly relevant, especially in the era of renewed interest in Mars and space colonization. And of course, no talk about Mars is complete without Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles. It's not really a story, but a collection of short stories set in chronological order, spans the first human expeditions to Mars, eventually the collapse of Earth's civilization, the quiet survival of a few settlers, uses Mars not as a scientific frontier, but as a symbolic landscape, a canvas for exploring human nature. Martians in this one are telepathic humanoid Martians, rich traditions, subtle wisdoms. Bradbury's prose is lyrical and melancholic. Let's go on. Okay, if you want to, in 1950, if you want to unplug one more time, they did a radio play. Here it is.
The Martian Chronicles, a dramatization of the new novel by one of our most brilliant young science fiction writers, Ray Bradbury. The Martian Chronicles. January in the year 1999. The rocket lay on the launching field, blowing out pink clouds of fire and heat, cracking the icicles, melting with them behind, on an ordinary Monday morning on the ordinary planet Earth. They lived in a house of crystal pillars on the planet Mars by the edge of an empty sea.
That's ridiculous, Hila. Everyone knows the third planet is incapable of supporting life. There's too much oxygen in their atmosphere.
I suppose.
People were living here last week.
People? Martians. Where are they now?
Dead.
Dead? What did they die of?
You won't believe it, Captain. Chickenpox. No resistance to an Earth disease, I guess.
So the other rocket did get through to Mars.
It looks like it, Captain. God only knows what the Martians did to them. But at least we know what they did to the Martians.
The light beam radio crackled with the news. By morning, the shelves of the luggage store were empty, and the rockets were blasting off, headed back to Earth. In a few days, everyone was gone, and the planet of Mars once more lay deserted and silent. And then, after all the rest had gone, one last rocket landed on Mars. A small, family-sized rocket come all the way from Earth.
But what about the Martians? When do we get to see them?
There they are, son. Look down at the water.
I don't see anything there.
Beside the boat. Look at the reflections in the water.
But that's us down there. Just you and me and Mom and the baby.
Here, son. You see, we're the Martians now.
Thank you. So the allegory of chickenpox giving to populations that were not immune from it, I think was also a commentary about earlier question of expansion. So as a side note, and I forgot the gentleman's name, but the one who played the kid in this, I listen to radio classics all the time. He does all the voices. He was an adult, but he did all the kids' voices on dozens and dozens of radio shows, and I, for the life of me, can't remember what his name is at the moment. But that was not a kid, that was an adult doing that voice. And we had, of course, with Rock Hudson, Darren McGavin, Bernadette Peters, Rodney McDowell, Fritz Weaver, Barry Morris, aired in January of 1980 with 3 episodes. I'm not going to subject you to any of that. Going a little faster, we have The Sands of War by Clark. I will skip that again. I can go over that later if you want. Isaac Asimov wrote The Martian Way, a novella that was first published in Galaxy Science Fiction in 1952. In this one, he's an Earth politician who pushes the boycott of thinly veiled stand in for Senator Joseph McCarthy. Fear-mongering and short-sighted nationalism are contrasted with the Martians' pragmatic and forward-thinking approach. Martians begin the story as a dependent colonists, but end as self-sufficient pioneers. So in this one, humans are the Martians. They've colonized Mars, again, predating what is going to be happening in the future after Mariner passes. And then we also have Martians Go Home. Actually, considering this was written in 1955, and then instead of the Martians invading Earth to conquer, they just came to Earth to insult and for sarcasm and relentless mockery.
What was that? What was the last statement?
Relentless mockery. In 1989, if you want to unplug it.
What are you looking at? What, you never seen a Martian before? All right, you hear Mars, you think exotic. Well, I'll tell you something, it's boring. I mean, I had a girlfriend who was dead for 12 years before I realized she wasn't watching TV. So we decided to visit Earth. You know, half the guys wanted to go to Vegas, and half the guys wanted Hawaii. So we said, what the hell? Let's book the whole planet.
Worldwide estimates indicate there may be as many as 1 billion of these green space invaders.
1 billion? 1 billion? Ah! Give me your best shot. How about... Ooh, that has gotta hurt. People, we're not going anywhere.
You guys don't do this, do you?
No.
Well, you can just eat your little green hearts out.
Randy Quaid, Anita Morris, Margaret Collin, Vic Dunlop, and Barry Sobel.
I may not be that close friend you've been looking for.
Martians Go Home.
1, 2, 3!
And
Edward R. Pressman production, where every alien is a comedian.
You can plug that in. And also, last but not least, we have Kurt Vonnegut's The Sirens of Titan. Let's see, what's interesting about this? Rumford, let's see, where does it start here? Malachi Constant, the richest man in the 22nd century of America, who was swept into a bizarre interplanetary journey, orchestrated by Winston Niles Rumford, a man caught in a space-time anomaly. Anyway, we'll go through that. Just saying that even Kurt Vonnegut got into the act. And one last Twilight Zone episode. I guess we can just skip that one. Everybody has seen this episode, correct? Yeah. No? Somebody said no? Well, I guess we're playing it. Unplug it again. This is at the end.
Why are you doing this? Why are you looking at me like that? Marcusson, you are right! People are alike everywhere.
Species of animal brought back alive. Interesting similarity in physical characteristics to human beings. In head, trunk, arms, legs, hands, feet. Very tiny, undeveloped brain. Comes from primitive planet named Earth. And he will remain here in his cage with the running water and the electricity and the central heat as long as he lives. Samuel Conrad has found the Twilight Zone.
Man, what
Yeah.
a
And we had Stranger around the time, Stranger in a Strange Land, 1961. Yeah. So we've crossing a barrier here. So in 1965, Mariner 4 flew by Mars. Science fiction was depicted for the most part as ancient civilizations, exotic landscapes. But afterwards, Jesus. The Mariner flyby didn't kill Mars in fiction, it transformed it. Writers moved from fantasy to speculative realism, using Mars as a mirror for Earth's politics, ecology, existential questions. Red Planet became a testing ground for humanity's future, not a playground for alien romance. Yet the mythic Mars never fully vanished. It lingers in retrofuturism, alternate histories, and the occasional pulp revival, proof that even in the face of cold data, imagination finds a way. And there we have, again, even though we went by, we still had My Favorite Martian. Now, can anybody tell me what movie they made out of this book? Or movies? Anybody at home? Anybody want to take a guess? It's a short story.
Blade Runner was one. Yeah, that was.
Oh, wow.
So if you wanted to read the origin of where it came from, you can read that short story.
So what was it, 1990 and then 2012?
Yes. Well, yes, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then they redid a newer version.
Wow.
Frederick Pohl, Plus Man. Now again, since Mariner, now Martians people had to colonize Mars. So in this story, what they did to survive on Martian's thin atmosphere, the main character's body was replaced with artificial one, At every step, he became more and more disconnected from humanity, unable to feel things in his new body. It was only after arriving on Mars that his new body begins to make sense to him, perfectly adapted to his new world, and he becomes perfectly separated from his old world and from humanity. Not the first time of transformations being used in Outer Limits, the Outer Limits episode, Architects of Fear in 1963, surgically changed the Outer Limits Afterlife episode in 1996, genetically changed the Outer Limits Origin of the Species TV episode in 1998, changes to communicate with alien species. And that's what I have. So, but that's another way, man. Mars is depicted, the man has to adapt physically. Desolation Road, written in 1988, a mashup of science fiction and magical realism. And interconnected stories explore quirky characters in a town that's just a stop on a railroad station across from Mars in the future. The scientist is trekking across the desert. The terraformed Mars meets humanoid green person who claims to have traveled through time to make sure that everything is in its right place in time to fulfill his destiny. I've not read that. I don't know if anybody has. They can let me know. And remember that red, green, blue? Okay, well, Kim Stanley Robinson, 1993, wrote this trilogy. Some of you may have read that. And one more unplug. I made again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This one last time.
One last.
What is that?
Hi there. Are you interested in the White House?
I'll tell you one thing, they ain't getting a TV.
As we must learn to dance.
Girls, get out!
Hey, we all make mistakes, Mr. President.
Mars attacking.
Oh yeah.
Telling Ken that my younger son didn't sleep for 2 weeks after he saw that movie.
So did you know there was Mars Attacks trading cards?
Wow. Wow.
And of course, probably currently the most famous story about and the most scientifically accurate, except for the torrential windstorms that don't occur on Mars. The Martian is actually a self-published sensation. Yes, he couldn't get a publisher to produce it, to write it, so he published it himself.
And how did the book do? Do you have any sense of that?
Well, it was good enough to make a movie out of it.
Oh, okay.
And there was in 2016, I don't know, sort of the Mars premiered on the National Geographic. It was a combination of a fictional Mars landing between a NASA-like industry and then followed up by a more commercialized one interspersed with real scientists and speakers. I'm sorry, Ken, I'm going to ask you one more time to.
Hey, that's no problem.
Earth's surface is the shoreline of a new ocean.
Don't move.
You ready for this?
It'll be the greatest adventure ever in human history.
We're looking at a red planet.
Mars, a global event series, tonight at 9 on the National Geographic Channel.
If you haven't seen it, you might see it. It's actually very good. We're getting to the end, guys. So again, more movies about Mars. not covering any of those, but you can see all the way from, again, from 1938 all the way, well, this is not the current list. I'm sure there's a couple since then. Here are more books I could have talked about, so you can thank me for not going there. And then finally, things, few instances in fiction provided details of description of Mars colonization, and here's a partial list of that. And with that, I say thank you.
Thanks.